Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, not in it for the money. I was a hacker for almost as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, I lived to mess around with computers, programming, writing and cracking codes, and surfing to the darkest edges of the internet. What I couldn't learn from manuals, chat rooms, message boards, or friends I pretty much just figured out on my own. So early on I knew that hacking would make me way more money than flipping burgers at Mickey D's, earning a college diploma, or even scoring a high-paying job on Wall Street, and with a lot less of the mess and stress that usually accompanies your average 9-to-5 gig. But it was never about money, and things have changed since then, which was why I'd retired. For obvious reasons, I can't tell you my name. And after you read this, you won't be able to trace it back to my IP address it was sent from, since I've developed and used a multi-level super encryption masking and scrubbing device to send this screed. So, why am I taking the risk of getting back into the game, stepping out of the shadows and into the grid by divulging this secret to the New York Times? Because of the way they've ruined it for all of us. I've had enough and just can't stomach it anymore. Who are they, you ask? In 2 words, today's hackers. These hackers today. They've no respect and are almost always in it only for the money. When I was in the hacking game, it was all about changing the world and making a difference. Sure, every now and then we'd line our own pockets a bit, with enough to cover expenses and then some. But for me, unlike them, it wasn't about the money. Maybe it's just the lone wolf versus mob mentality. Today's hackers are not only creating chaos, but they make no distinction of who it is directed toward. For them, there are no good or bad guys, only easy pickings. And because they do that, it reflects poorly upon our past and present hacker communities as a whole. It's their ransomware attacks that really piss off most of us legit hackers. Nowadays, the bigger their haul, the more likely these greed-fueled Robin Hoodish banditos will invest it in specialization and franchising. They've certainly gotten better at it over the years. Remember the Colonial Pipeline assault? It may have not been the most costly hack attack from 2021 to 2022. Only $4.4 million was made from that hack. But the downtime caused by lost business and revenue was far more financially damaging to them than the ransom size. The WannaCry virus was far bigger in the number of computers it infected, 300,000 plus, and resulted in $6 billion USD of damage, albeit the blackmail payout dollar size wasn't the top dollar in brides for that period. Well, I, for one, want to put a stop to it now. Here's a short list of today's greatest hacker hits. Coming in hot at number 1 for 2021 is the insurance company, Can Financial Corp, for a whopping $40 million, which was a record liberation money amount paid up to that point. The second was meat producer JBS's payment of $11 million US, followed by GPS system manufacturer Garmin for $10 million, an unidentified Austrian organization, $4.7 million, CWT Global Travel Services, $4.5, Brenntag, a chemical distributor, $4.4, Travelex, $2.3, resulting in the corporation's declared bankruptcy, fashion company Fat Face Ltd, 2.0, and then $1.14 million extorted from San Francisco's University of California. Do the math and tally it up. That's a grand total of nearly 85 million US dollars. As 2022 began, so did more digital assaults, beginning with the FlexBooker data breach on January 3rd. The Red Cross charity organization was the next innocent victim. Then came Crypto.com, multiple Credit Suisse banks, universities, hospitals, and even the Costa Rican government. Now, with nearly 36 other major thefts occurring thus far in a year, with still 3 months to go, it's really getting out of hand, isn't it? When today's hackers set their sights on specific ransom amounts, they normally take into account several factors. 1. The size of the infected network. 2. The target's overall net worth, including revenue and clients' accounts held in escrow. 3. The plane of data sensitivity being breached, and that's the way they do it. It not only hurts organizations and businesses out there that put good into the world, but even reputable hackers such as me. Therefore, this really has to stop. And there's only one way to paralyze today's hackers dead in their tracks, to halt them from fermenting further mischief. So, what's a respectable hacker of yesteryear ever to do these days? Basically, the way I decided to deal with it is not stooping to their level. That was up until the day when I had this idea. We, the good guy hackers of yesterday, need to band together and go after all the bad guy hackers of today to fight fire with fire. In other words, globally, the good must unite with one another to go after these nefarious computer criminals to hit them where it'll hurt the most. We hack the bad guys. I've been developing a unique virus that'll infect their devices and which would A, identify offenders so the rest of the world could detect them and out these blackmailers, B, temporarily lock down their software until the threat's resolved, and C, permanently disable and damage beyond repair any hardware used by chronic repeat offenders to stop them and wipe out their access to easy cash flow. With every day that's passed, I got closer to my goal, to halt and hurt today's malicious hackers. And now, I feel I may have cracked that code to allow me access via a back door in all computers that'll leave those greedy bastards defenseless. I'm almost there. And come tomorrow, my friends, sweet revenge. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, I'm back. Sins and sinners. Secrets carry weight, like lead. Iris inhaled the pleasant air, which was ripe with the dewy petrichor of the post-rain evening. A cool breeze ruffled the leaves of nearby lofty mango trees, all of which were well endowed with succulent yellow mangoes. The sky was shades of pretty pink and purple pastels, making her way down the narrow path between the tall trees. She recollected her memories with Dante, Isabel, Rhett, and Jax, running along the shore, pushing each other in the sea, and dreaming about sailing the world one day. They would stand and watch the sea crash onto the shore for hours, and it'd still never be enough. She remembered standing on the cliff with her friends and taking in the salty sea breeze. When the sun would set, the vast body of water would reflect the warm colors of the endless sky. And there hadn't ever been a more beautiful sight. She'd gaze at it for hours, fantasizing about unending aspirations and dreams. Iris traced the carvings on the trees she used to very much enjoy making, with scraps of metal and pieces of wood she mysteriously found every day. She suspected it was Jax, always doing these little things for her that could brighten her day. He could rarely say no to her, which led to them being part of quite questionable activities. She'd once said that she wanted to visit the yearly carnival on her birthday, and the next day she found the gleaming golden entry tickets of the carnival on her bed. She didn't really question where he got the tickets from, since they cost a lot, and he wasn't from a rich family. But she did remember him mentioning a friend who owed him a favor. Isabella and Rhett had been so jealous that day. Iris giggled, recalling the look on their faces as she ventured further on the narrow path between the tall trees. The pastel-colored sky started to fade away into the dark shadows, from dusty lilac to indigo, and from indigo to inky black. A cool breeze blew, ruffling the leaves of the nearby mango trees, which were swaying to the notes of the wind. Iris shuddered, feeling the wind on the bare skin of her arms. She had half a mind to spend the whole night there, but even she knew it wasn't the best decision to invite the dangers lurking in the dark. Too lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice where she was keeping her foot. Instead of stepping on the hard rocks and stones, she stepped on the muddy soil. Her eyes went wide as she tried to grab a stray branch in hopes of regaining her balance. But down went she, and the stray branch with a thud. Dear Lord, things just can't go right for too long, is it? Iris internally screamed, holding on to the bark of a nearby tree. She got back up on her feet with much difficulty and brushed off the dirt from her limbs. She looked up at the night sky, where millions of stars were in close clusters. But the full moon blazing in the sky was even more beautiful than the stars around. She smiled as she thought of the days she and her friends used to gaze at the moon together and talk about a fictional world that was everyone's personal paradise. Sadly, growing up had burst her bubble of believing that she could ever live in a place where the sky met the seas. With a sigh, she looked at the rich brown soil, padding around to look for her phone. Walking around in the mud, leaving her footprints behind, she heard a satisfying crunch. A shiver ran down her spine, and she visibly shuddered. Believing that the sound was of her own footstep, Iris took a step backward and crouched down. She started digging around in that area, throwing away the twigs, leaves, and lumps of soil she came across till she felt something papery. Scrunching her brows, she pulled up the small piece of paper from the ground and held it in her hands. The paper was tattered and torn from the edges and dust-laden with a tint of yellowish tan. She blew air onto it and wiped off the remaining dirt on her white blouse, leaving behind an unlovely stain. It's not like it is clean anymore, to begin with, Iris huffed. Squinting her eyes and looking closely at the paper, she realized it was a photograph. a photograph of a younger version of Rhett, Jax, Isabella, and herself. Huge grins showing their crooked teeth and resting their arms on each other's necks. Those wonderful memories came rushing back to her. But the small smile on her face vanished as she remembered how her wonderful childhood had a terrible turn of events. Chartusa. Rhett had always been the golden child in their circle. However, he did have a mean streak to him. Envy rolled off him whenever someone else outdid him. Over the years, harmless cursing turned into aggressive shoving, pushing, and malevolent acts driven by hostility. He was at the point where he used to be jealous even when Jax, Isabella, and Iris used to hang out in pairs sometimes. Isabella called it a phase of extreme insecurity. Perhaps he felt that his friends wouldn't want to hang out with him if he wasn't the best. Perhaps he believed the quote, "Either you're something or you are nothing at all," a bit too much. Nonetheless, whatever it wasn't going to end well for him if he didn't change his unpleasant behavior. She'd contemplated on staying away from Rhett, but Isabella told her that they wouldn't want his situation to worsen. She had reluctantly agreed. After a few days, Rhett's birthday arrived. Isabella had decided to throw him a surprise party that would cheer him up. Iris and Jax helped her decorate, and all of them awaited Rhett's grand arrival. Grand was an understatement. Rhett had arrived, reeking of strong alcohol, ignoring the presence of Isabella and Iris. He headed straight towards Jax and held him by his collar. His lips curled in disgust as he uttered some unmentionable words. Processing the enormity of what just happened, the girls ran towards Rhett to pull him away from Jax. But Rhett already managed to land a punch on the poor guy's face, escaping the grip of Isabella and Iris. He kept on punching Jax till his knuckles were bloody. Horrified, Iris grabbed the nearest object which she could find, which turned out to be an iron-made decor, and slammed it against Rhett's head. Ceasing his torture on Jax, he brought his hand towards his bleeding head and caught a few drops of blood on his fingertips. He felt lightheaded as black spots started appearing in front of his eyes. In the cold silence that followed, all of them could almost hear Rhett's last heartbeats as he closed his eyes, took his final breath, and fell on the floor with a loud thud. "He's gone." Isabella broke the silence, her eyes void of any emotion. "I'm sure he's in a better place now." Isabella continued after no one spoke a word. "What have I done?" whispered Iris, tears threatening to come out of her eyes. It still seemed unreal. "You did what was right. You ended his reign of terror. Best he be dead than alive," Jax said, anger evident in his tone as he looked at the ghoulish body of his once best friend. "Why did he do that to you?" Did something happen between you two? Iris asked Jax. Not receiving a response, she prompted again. Answer me, Jax. I can't live with the guilt, but at least I'll die peacefully, knowing that what I've done was for the right reason. Did he need a reason any longer to punch the shit out of his friends? Said Jax. What happened between you two? She asked for the second time. Stop asking that question again and again, Jax said, his teeth grinding together. Why? Don't you realize what has just happened? How can you be so... Iris was at a loss for words. You know that's a bloody problem of yours. All you and your selfish nature do is present yourself as the victim. Stop making everything about you, Iris. Stop pressuring me. And it's you who has killed him, not us. Oh, so I should have let him beat you to death, is it? That would have been better than this, said Jax, his eyes icy as he stomped away, as if her soul could bleed an ocean through the eyes. That was the enormity of Iris's sobbing. Isabella hugged her, slowly rocking her body as if she was a little child. Iris, he didn't mean any of that. He is just upset. Anyone would have felt that way, I'm sure. What you did, it wasn't wrong. It was inevitable. You freed him from the evil inside, consoled Isabella, who had been quiet all this long. How do you even understand 1% of what we're feeling anyway? You didn't do any of this. Iris laughed humorlessly. Rhett was the closest to you than any of us. Didn't you consider him your friend? Don't you feel the least sad about it? You don't seem to be grieving at all. Just because I don't express it does not mean I don't feel it. And Rhett was as much of a friend to me as he was to the rest of us. Would you rather he attain peace through death, or rather he continue inflicting violence and chaos on us? Iris didn't say anything afterward. The weight of the guilt was heavy. Despair was a crushing force on her chest, constricting her breath and coloring the world around her. Black as she too was slowly engulfed by the darkness. Chantraya. That is exactly how a tragedy like theirs breaks one's heart, making one believe that the ending might still be happy until the very last minutes. Iris flipped the photograph, returning to the present day, and read the words she had written a long time ago. Which of us could say we were more sinned against than sinning? Murder. Hi, Miranda. I'm officially Officer Zionel, but you can call me Zoe. I just want to ask you a few questions about the recent situation. Zoe, don't say recent situation. It's stupid when we all know that what you mean is murder of your father. You're a feisty kid, Miranda. Thanks. I take it as a compliment. Now that we got that out of the way, do you remember exactly where you were at exactly 6:53 p.m. on July 17th? Gosh, I don't remember. It seems that all of my memories have been wiped from my head. Miranda! Okay. I won't be a brat. But you said yourself that I'm feisty, Zoe. I didn't mean it as a compliment, like you took it. Whoa, ho, ho! She's got an attitude, too. I think we'll get along. So, what's the real answer to my question? I was at the bowling alley with my twin Maya and our best friends Sarah and Diavian. We were about to eat pizza before the next game. It was a tournament. When Gima called and said Dad was shot. Long story short, me and Maya left before we could finish the tournament, and our friends lost. That's what Maya said. But who's Gima? Maya mentioned a grandma, but not a Gma. Oh, right. Maya calls our grandma Grandma, but I call her Gma. That's what I called her when I was little, and I couldn't say Grandma, and it stuck. All right. How did your grandmother know that your father was hit? She went over to our house to drop off some books that I had left at her house. And that's when she found him. Dead as a doornail, right there on the kitchen floor. You and Maya's stories are matching up, but Maya seemed a lot more emotional about this than you do. She was practically sobbing as she talked to me. Why are you so cool and collected? Zoe, do you seriously not realize that Dad is not Maya and I real Dad? That one left us before we were born. Don't have a clue where he's at. When Mama married Rob, Maya warmed up to him immediately. I was not so cooperative. I've never been close to him. Yeah, he's always been there for me. But he never, and will never, now, become a father to me. When I first found out about it all, I was a little upset. But it only took me a day to be over it. Maya, like you said, is still a wreck. Oh, I understand now. So, the first person your grandmother called was you. Not Maya, or your uncle, or any of your aunts? Not even your mother? Yeah. Now remember that this was Mama's mama. She didn't want to hurt Mama right away. Maya would be too sensitive too, and she didn't have any of Rob's siblings' numbers. So, the first one she called was me. Simple as that. Maya told me that your grandmother called you first because she thought you were closest to Rob. You're a bad liar, Zoe. I know my sister like I know my own mind. She and everyone else in our family already knows that I'm not the closest person to Rob. So what did she say? You know, you should be a detective. I did my best lying, and you still got me. That could come handy in a lot of situations if you become a part of the force. Yeah, whatever. What did Maya say? Same thing as you, Miranda. Okay. So, now what? Can I leave? Please. I need to talk to Maya. She's probably hysterical by now. No, you can't. I'm sorry. There are still a few more questions that I have to ask you. Where was your mother when Rob was so awfully killed? She was at work, at the hospital. They were short-staffed. Okay, this may be a dumb question, but do you know where your aunts and uncle were? Yeah, they were all getting together for a dinner at Olive Garden. Rob was going to go with them. I'm guessing that he must have been on his way out when he was shot. Do you know of anyone who had a grudge against Rob? Miranda, who is it?
Shinso.
Miranda, was it you?
Kayan.
Why, Miranda?
Pesisasa.
Miranda! I hated him. He abused me. He slapped me, punched me, kicked me. He verbally abused me too. He never did it to anyone else. Your sister knows. She's covering up for you. Yes? Was it self-defense? Or did you do it because you were so sick of it all? Self-defense. Despite all of these lies, I promise you that it was just self-defense. He was trying to hurt me again. He was screaming at me. I went into his room and got into the gun safe. I pulled the gun out. I hid it behind my back while I walked downstairs. In the kitchen, he started to slap me and punch me in the gut and face. After a few minutes, I just shot. I couldn't stop it. It is possible for us to prove that, so you wouldn't be put in juvie. For now, though, you'll have to stay here at the station. I'm sorry, Miranda. I can tell you're telling the truth, but I can't release you until we can prove that. Now that you've admitted that, I understand. All right, come with me. We're going to go talk to Maya. Miranda! Oh, God. You told her, didn't you? Yes, I did, Maya. I'm sorry. It's okay. I still love you. I love you too. All right, girls. Maya, will you tell me the truth of what you know? Of what actually happened? That's the thing. I don't know anything. All I know is what Miranda told me. She shot Rob because he was trying to hurt her again. Then she came to the bowling alley to play in a tournament. That part of our story was true. Okay. I'm going to call your mother to pick you up, Maya. Miranda, you stay with her until I come back. Okay, all right. The cheating husband, draping the palu of my sari around my waist. I tucked the loose end of it into the petticoat to avoid getting ketchup and oil stains on it as I helped serve piping hot samosas, ordered fresh from Narula's bakery in Indiranagar, into the Corelle plates. The whiff of the spicy mint chutney I dolloped into each plate made my mouth water. Next, I served vegetable spring rolls, paneer tikkas, and semolina idlis flavored with mustard seeds and curry leaves into each plate, adding chicken tikkas into the plates for the two non-vegetarians in our group of friends. Said Mira, tasting the cream of mushroom soup from the ladle as she leaned over the stove where the soup had been simmering. Careful, darling, I said, grabbing her palu as it slipped down her shoulder and nearly licked the flames of the stove. You should tuck it in. Mira turned around, facing me as she smoothed her lavender chiffon sari. What do you think? The layered diamond necklace around her slender neck and the diamond studs in her ears shimmered under the bright kitchen lights. The makeup, expensive and excessive, had done its bit in covering the fatigue that comes from working long hours in an HR leadership position at an IT services multinational corporation. But it couldn't camouflage her dissatisfaction with nearly everything in her life, including her husband, who I thought doted on her. "You look stunning," I lied. "Beautiful sorry," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. One thing Raj does well after years of practice, picking up the right gifts for me. You've trained him well. You know, Adi doesn't even know what the various fabrics of saris are, let alone buy a sari for me. There are many other things my husband, Aditya Gulati, does not know, including the surprise I've planned for him tonight, which he should be receiving any minute now. Oh, come on. So what if he can't buy a sari for you? He brings home enough money, she said, winking at me. Well, that's true. And an added incentive for what I was about to do tonight. I'm his only family, and the next in line to inherit his business empire should any misfortune befall him. I would have preferred to sit on one of the cozy couches in the living room, sipping wine with the rest of our friends, pretending to be interested in the gossip and the conversations. But if I didn't help in the kitchen tonight, as I usually did when our fortnightly get-togethers were held at Mira's place, just like she helped when the parties were held at my place, everyone would notice. And tonight was not a night I would want to be remembered for behaving oddly in any way, however inconsequential. People adhered to patterns and routines unless something was on their mind, and there was absolutely nothing on my mind. Nothing I could talk about anyway. As we carried the plates to the living room to serve the 5 women gazing hungrily towards the kitchen, and I accidentally glimpsed at the wall clock, my heart raced with the knowledge of the unfolding events at 211 Palm Springs. It was 9:02 p.m. He would be breaking into the house right about now, with his expert gloved fingers working the lock on the back door. The light click of the lock would go unnoticed by the 2 adults in the bedroom or in the bathtub, enmeshed in each other's arms, oblivious to everything except the immediate, stark sensations of the flesh. He would then go to one of the rooms and rummage through the drawers and the wardrobe for jewelry and other valuables, and keep at it until Adi, finally alerted by the strange noises coming from the adjacent room, would cover his toned body by a robe or a towel and go to the next room to investigate. My breath caught in my throat as I pictured the long-bladed dagger piercing Adi's torso, quick stab wounds, at least 5 of them. As the victim's wife, I'd receive a detailed post-mortem report, and my contact would receive the full payment only if the work was satisfactory. After finishing off Adi, he would then stifle the woman's impending scream with a hand over her mouth and a dagger in her heart. The spicy tang of the mint chutney flooded my mouth as I pictured blood splattering white walls, the police dubbing the double murder as a burglary gone horribly wrong, and closing the case after being unable to find any trace of the suspect at the crime scene or any other lead, even after months of the investigation. Just as Tanya, our plump, sari-clad friend with diamond-studded stubs for fingers, began waving her pudgy hands in the air and describing the sordid details of a high-profile divorce case her husband was working on, my phone began vibrating in my purse. Not my ordinary phone, but my burner phone, the one I'd bought recently for one specific purpose. My heart plummeted on seeing the name Sheila Sharma flashing on the screen. I'd saved the investigation agency's number by this name to avoid any suspicions at home, even if Adi had stumbled upon the phone by chance. I would have told him it was my new office phone. The subject was seen entering house number 211, Palm Springs, at 2 p.m. in the afternoon on March 19th. The subject and the female resident of 211, Palm Springs, were seen on the balcony having drinks at 2:35 p.m. and embracing at 2:49 p.m. Holding hands, they went in towards the bedroom at 2:55 p.m. The subject emerged from the house at 4:45 p.m. and left the house in his car. There were many such reports I'd received in exchange for the total bill amount of rupees 450,000 I'd shelled out over 3 months. My husband was cheating with a much younger, unmarried woman who worked as a receptionist in his office. He hadn't yet brought up divorce, but I had a feeling it was on his mind, and he was looking for the best opportunity while building up his courage to talk about it. I stepped into the cool air on the balcony and closed the sliding door behind me. "Hello," I answered the phone. "Mrs. Gulati," said a deep, cultured voice at the other end. I immediately recognized him as Mr. Aurora, the managing partner of the agency. But why would he call me himself? It was usually the manager assigned to my case who communicated with me. The protocol was that the secretary would first call me up and set up a meeting with the case manager at my convenient time. At the allotted time, she'd call me again and patch me into the call with the case manager. "Mr. Aurora," I said, "what's the matter? I'm really sorry to be calling you up at this time, and I apologize if this call has caused you any inconvenience." He paused. "I'm afraid I have some bad news." "What?" I blurted out. My mind was spinning. I had made the last payment to the agency a week ago and terminated our contract after receiving all the evidence they had collected over the past 3 months. Everything I needed to set my plan in motion. What could have possibly gone wrong? Mr. Aurora cleared his throat. There was a mix-up at our end. The file and the evidence we gave you was for another case, not yours. It's a grave mistake, I know, and I personally take full responsibility. We are willing to refund your full amount. My knees buckled under my weight. What did he mean? Was my husband not cheating on me with the pretty receptionist? But even before I had hired the investigation agency, all the signs were there. Adi was returning home late every day, many a time with his clothes smelling like a woman's perfume. He was distracted and extremely possessive of his mobile phone, taking it with him to the toilet as if he needed it to wipe his ass. No, my husband was certainly cheating on me. All the signs were there. I want the correct file, I said, finally finding my voice. Of course, said Mr. Aurora, his voice heavy with relief. I have it here with me. I can have it delivered to your office tomorrow morning. Would that be okay? In my purse, my other mobile began vibrating. Why was Roy calling me at this hour? I had spoken to him 2 hours ago on my way to Mira's house. He knew I'd be occupied today and how critical it was for everything to be perfect tonight. One call in one evening could be attributed to work discussions. We worked together, after all. But 2 calls on the night my husband got murdered could arouse suspicion. I groaned inwardly. Sorry, did you say you have the file on your desk? Yes, I do. Read it out to me. A pause. Sorry, Mrs. Gulati. Transmitting this information over the phone. My head was exploding with fury, splotches of red blurring my vision. Listen to me, Aurora. You fucked me by giving me the wrong information. I could sue you for lakhs of rupees. I could have your ass arrested. Read me the information right now, or you'll pay dearly for your mistake. I could hear his mind's machinery whirring over the mobile phone. Aurora, I said in my best intimidating voice. Just a minute, please, he said. Some papers rustled. Your husband indeed is cheating on you, Mrs. Gulati. The address of the woman in question? Yes, I said breathlessly. C401, High Garden, Indiranagar. The woman is... I'll call you back. I snapped the phone shut, holding my head between my hands. Mira. My best friend, Mira. Adi and Mira. I could not believe it. I was going to ask them to bring photographic evidence this time. I wouldn't believe just the report like I did the last time. With trembling hands, I dialed my contact's number. Maybe it was not too late for the couple in 221, Palm Springs, somebody else's cheating husband and his mistress. Maybe the dense Bangalore traffic had delayed my contact. Maybe call waiting. He was talking to somebody else. Fuck. Roy's name flashed on my mobile once again. Hey, is everything okay? I froze on hearing Myra's voice behind me. She had appeared silkily out of nowhere and was now standing less than 3 feet away. I gazed into her brown eyes, trying to find the answers to my questions. Was it really you who was having an affair with my husband? Why did you betray your best friend? All's well. I need to use the washroom, I said, sliding in through the door past her. I went directly into her bedroom and closed the door. 2 or 3 minutes was all I had before she became suspicious. I began rummaging through her jewelry box on the dresser. If she was the woman Adi was having an affair with, she'd be missing a leaf-shaped diamond stud, one of which I'd found between the bed and the mattress while changing the sheets in our guest room. So many earrings and rings and chains and gold and diamond, and the woman was still unhappy. Aha! There it was, a single leaf-shaped diamond stud, just one. I closed the jewelry box quickly and went to the washroom to splash some water on my face. So it really was true, huh? My husband and my best friend. Unimaginable. I grabbed my burner phone from my purse and dialed my contact once again. Thankfully, this time he picked up on the second ring. "Ma'am," he said in his hoarse voice, "the work is done. I'm out of there." Everything went according to plan. I sat on the toilet seat and began hyperventilating. Somebody else's cheating husband and his mistress were dead, thanks to me. If I got rid of the burner phone, there still wasn't anything to link me to the murders. In fact, given that I had no idea who the victims were, there was no way the murders could be tied back to me. The investigation agency would keep quiet. I'd make sure of that. I'd pay the contact discreetly, as I'd originally planned. Anyway, he was a professional killer who wouldn't get caught. There was nothing else. Roy's name flashed on my mobile for the third time in the past 10 minutes. Roy was my married colleague, my longtime friend, and now my lover for the past 6 months, ever since I began suspecting that Adi was cheating on me. He'd been such a source of comfort to me and had become a very special part of my life. Did I love him? I don't know. I certainly missed his ribald jokes and his infectious laughter, the confidence he exuded, and the affection he showered upon me, his sharp intelligence and his precise meticulousness when he wasn't around. Once I'd got rid of Adi, I looked forward to spending more time with Roy. Our first night together would be very special. I was sure of it. "Hello?" I answered. I was greeted by a sputtering sound. "Roy, are you okay?" I asked, alarmed. "I've been..." The rest of the sentence was wiped out by a fit of violent coughing. I stood bolt upright. "What's wrong? Where are you?" "Stabbed. I've been stabbed," he managed to blurt out. "What? Where? Have you called an ambulance?" he said when he stabbed me. "Roy!" I screamed into the phone. When he stabbed me, he said, "Courtesy of Mrs. Gulati." My phone slipped through my fingers and clattered to the tiled bathroom floor. My first instinct was to scream, but I simply collapsed on the cold, hard floor. As the sound of the wailing police sirens pierced the night air, I stared bleakly out of the window, contemplating the swiftly approaching karmic retribution. The plunderer's bank robbery and waltzing have a lot in common. Both have defined rhythms, and they're better with a partner. After waiting my turn, like an everyday customer, I handed my note and a paper sack to the blonde girl behind the counter while pulling back my sport coat to show her the butt of my pistol. The note read, "This is a robbery. Remain calm so no one gets hurt. Fill the sack from your drawer. Have a nice day." When she scanned my note, her eyes bulged and flicked from side to side. Her frightened blue peepers filled with disbelief as she stared at me to see if this was a prank. I smiled like a friend. "Please fill it up." With trembling fingers, she stuffed bills into the sack as if she'd win a prize for the fullest bag. The gorilla behind me noticed something wrong. Maybe the sweat-gouging channels through the quivering blonde's rouge tipped him off. He grunted and grabbed me in a bear hug, pinning my arms. My marine training kicked in and I stomped the arch of his foot with the sharp leather heel of my polished Oxfords. He winced and loosened his grip. This gave me enough slack to reach behind and twist his balls. He yipped like an injured puppy and let go, slowly sinking to the floor. The bank patrons turned to stare at the commotion. Unsure what was happening, I reached through the teller's wicket and yanked the half-filled sack of money from the blonde's jittery hands as my assailant rolled on the floor, grabbing his crotch. One of the suits in the back reached for a phone. Time to go. I strolled out of the bank before anyone attempted to jump me. Outside the bank, I wanted to run, but nothing attracts attention more than a man running from a bank with a bag in his hand. The alarm clanged, and I turned towards the bank like the other pedestrians, plastering a puzzled look on my face. A siren wailed in the distance. Sweat beaded my forehead, and I lengthened my strides short of a power walk. When I reached the corner, white exhaust flowed from the red Edsel coupe, and its big V8 growled, ready to whisk me to safety. I jumped in the passenger seat, and Marge drove away at 30 miles per hour. 2 police cruisers screamed past us in the other lane. Now, we'd have to ditch this flashy car in case anyone noticed it fleeing the scene. Marge and I have been robbing banks since I got out of the Marines in '53. My posting to Korea separated us for 3 agonizing years. And when I got back to the States, we promised each other we'd never be apart again. Although we talked about it, we never got married. We both felt that a piece of government parchment would not make us love each other any more than we did. When our cash ran low, we'd find a suitable bank in a small town, make an unauthorized withdrawal, and live comfortably on the proceeds for a few months. As long as we didn't take too much or go to the well too often, the local cops forgot us, and the FBI had enough problems with organized crime to worry about a small-town bank robbery. We never hit the same town twice. Our life between jobs was quiet and measured, spending the winter in Florida, soaking up the sun like other tourists. We danced every Saturday night and fished the local lakes. Marge loved the fall colors, so we spent September in New England before turning south for the winter. I don't remember the name of the town in Minnesota when we ran low on cash. While Marge gassed up the car, I got us a table in the Moosehead Diner. Over the blue plate special of corned beef and hash, I decided I wanted to go fishing. Margie, I've been thinking. It would be a shame to be in northern Minnesota and not go walleye fishing. How about we rent a cabin after this job and go fishing for the weekend? Marge placed her napkin on the table and pursed her lips. Okay, Harry, but all the cabins are probably rented. I reached for her hand. This is the end of the season, and we'll find a cabin somewhere, just for the weekend. Then we'll head for Vermont. She squeezed my hand and ran her thumb over my knuckles. We'll need some bait. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We'll stop at a bait shop and pick up some minnows. Or, if you'd rather, you can watch me fish. She removed her cat's eyeglasses with the fake rhinestones and leaned over the table. Not on your life, Buster. You fish. I fish. And I'll catch bigger fish. Just you watch me. I finished my coffee, left a $10 bill on the table, and wiped the crumbs off my tie. I'm going to the little boy's room, and then to work. As I walked across the street to the Imperial Bank, Marge parked the car around the corner. We took the North Road out of town towards Canada and doubled back south on a series of gravel concession roads. Navigation was Marge's job. When we hit the interstate, we turned east towards New England. The cops must have figured it out, or got lucky. They'd had 10 years to learn out our pattern. When we turned onto the interstate, 2 police cruisers, nose to nose, blocked our path to freedom. Blue and red lights flashed, and cops leaned across the hoods, pointing shotguns at us. 2 more cruisers pulled out of a side road and blocked our retreat. Marge slowed as we approached the roadblock and parked on the shoulder. A cop with a bullhorn yelled, "Get out of the car and lay on the ground." Marge turned off the ignition and gripped the wheel with hands at 10 and 2 while staring out the windshield. "Goodbye, Harry." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Goodbye, Marge." I drew my pistol and shot her through the ear. Blood spattered the windshield and side window as she slumped on the driver's door. I put the pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. Murder at the Roadhouse Saloon. I dozed, peacefully drooling on the notes from my philosophy class when the phone began its merciless shriek. My heart stopped. Notes, pens, and phone scattered across the floor in my shocked and befuddled response. Groggy, I rifled through the refuse until the lighted face of the phone gleamed from under the bed. Grabbing it, I cursed the caller. The ID announced, "Carol." Who the hell is Carol, and why is she calling at... I checked the time in the upper left corner of the phone. 4 p.m.? I rubbed the grit from my eyes and checked the ID again. Oh, that Carol. I wonder what she wants. Cousins and the only children of twin mothers and abusive fathers, we called whenever we needed support. Her father, murdered outside a saloon near the rail yard, and mine, a miserable drunk. We spent many hours commiserating about how we hated our families. Hey. Ed. Did I wake you? Number, I was reviewing my philosophy notes. You were asleep. Sorry, but I need to talk to you. She sounded agitated, upset. Okay. She'd gotten a call from some lawyer about the estate of our recluse Aunt Zoe. Estate? I didn't know the stingy old bag. No one did. Why you? Why not one of her sisters? They hate each other as much as they hate Aunt Zoe. Zoe was the elder of the three, and they hadn't spoken to each other in years. The lawyer said Aunt Zoe named me as executor of her will. Wow! I drilled my left eye with the knuckle of my index finger. Did you know her? Jerk. What a stupid question. Yeah, sure, we're best friends. No. Sorry, I'm not awake yet. How can I help? Thanks. I knew I could depend on you. I chuckled. I'm all you've got. You don't know the half of it. So the lawyer told me she has a storage unit with all her belongings, and we need to sort through them. Oh God. Was she a hoarder? I can see it now, digging through mounds of useless crap, rat dung and spoiled food. Better get us some hazmat suits. Carol barked a sudden laugh. You watch too much TV. Not with the classes I'm taking. Just an overactive imagination from being sequestered in this room. Well, here's your break. Can you meet me out at the U-Haul on Tate Street Saturday, say, about 10 a.m.? That's awfully early. You can handle it. I want to get through this quickly. I'll treat you to lunch. I'll be there. Saturday, 10 a.m. I set the phone down and sat cross-legged on the bed, rubbing my eyes. Although neither of us lived at home, our weird, dysfunctional family dynamics haunted us at every turn. Three sisters who hated each other and seldom spoke. The older sister, Zoe, a recluse, and the others are trapped in undesirable situations. My parents hated each other and should have divorced years ago, but couldn't figure out how. Carol's father dead, and the killer still unknown. Her mother was angry at everyone and everything, but unable to figure out why. We had temporary hope and happiness when we connected. Zoe, I'd never met her. I'd heard she was caustic and could squeeze a nickel until it squealed. Saturday rolled around and I overslept my alarm. After wolfing down some toast, I grabbed 2 lattes from Starbucks and parked outside the storage unit. Relieved that I didn't see her car, I slumped back in the seat. One of the building's hallway doors opened, and Carol sauntered up to the driver's window. I opened it about an inch. Oversleep? Number, I'm 5 minutes early. I got here 15 minutes ago. You're late. Cut me some slack. I got you a latte. Oh, how sweet. I wish you were my brother. Am I forgiven? Even though my clock said I was early? Yeah, let's get this done. Thanks for coming. You know I meant it when I said, I'm all you've got. Yeah, I thought of that too. She sipped her latte, muttering, so strange. And they're sisters. Well, let's do this. She held up the pinky finger of her left hand as I got out of the car. Together? What? We're back in grade school. Come on, best friends, secret pact. She waved her pinky. I hooked hers with my left pinky. Always. Our secret pact, as unique as the port wine-colored birthmarks tracing the length of our joined fingers. A sign we told all our classmates that made us special with secret powers, and when joined together, unbeatable. A stupid kids game that became our trademark and kept us close. I followed Carol down a long hall of articulated doors. She stopped at one of the middle units, pulling a key from her pocket and stuck it in the padlock. It still bothers me, I mused. She held the lock but didn't turn the key. What? Why would someone you never knew make you executor of her will? She grinned. My reaction to sorting through the old bag's hoard was bad, but you should have heard Mom's. She gave the lawyer hell and hung up on him. How'd your mom react? I gave my shoulders a lift and squeezed my face with an exaggerated frown. Beats the hell out of me. If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. She pinched her lips together and shook her head. Family dynamics. She must have really been pissed at our mothers. The padlock snapped open. Ah, you ready for the big reveal? Open sesame. The door rolled up. We stood there with our mouths open. You're kidding? Carol shifted to one foot, tapped the toe of the other, and curled her fists against her hips. Every exhale snapped from her lips with a soft puff. I cracked up. You certainly needed help. We stood in the doorway of the mid-sized locker, me snickering and Carol puffing, and stared at two steamer trunks standing on end in the middle of the otherwise empty unit. No hoard, no clutter, nothing but those two steamer trunks. Carol glanced at me from the corner of her eye and told me to shut up. Then she patted her hands together. Well, you take one trunk, and I'll take the other, and we'll get out of here in half the time. Whatever floats your boat. We still on for lunch? You and your appetite. And with that, we strolled up to the trunks and opened them. Years of memories spilled out in a flood of photos and letters and toys. We stood there in stunned silence. What is this? The overwhelming sight numbed me. How do we sort this out? Where do we begin? Well, I dropped to my knees. I guess we start digging. Carol nodded blankly and followed my lead. Together, we sifted through the life of this discarded person, someone we knew nothing about, awed at what we touched, held, and read. Out of this confused detritus of an enigma's life blossomed a persona of love and caring that eluded everyone who thought they knew her. In this kaleidoscope of wonder, we buried ourselves until I stretched and glanced at my watch. God almighty, we've been sitting here for almost 6 hours. It's 2:45. Carol sat back and crossed her legs, holding what appeared to be a letter. Hey. Her voice broke, and large tears began to roll down her face. You gotta read this. She held it out to me. The paper shook in her hand. A large knot twisted in my stomach. For an instant, I stared at her swaying hand. I didn't want to read whatever was written on that page, but an urge somewhere deep inside forced me to take it. At first, I only saw Carol's eyes and the strange, frightening focus they held. But then the words, written in a graceful script, sucked the breath from my lungs and left me gasping. My hand flopped in my lap, my arm weakened by the weight of the message. I stared at the trunk's latch, gathering my thoughts and fighting to still my pounding heart. I turned to Carol as a new wave of tears crested in her eyes. You're my sister. She answered with a rapid nod and hid her quivering lips behind her hands. My God, but why? How? I waved my hand toward the contents of the open trunk. I think this is starting to make sense. I pushed aside the clutter, digging toward the bottom corner, and stopped. I pulled out a birth certificate, mine, and held it up with 2 fingers like it was radioactive. She held a similar one up to me. The certificates list Zoe as our mother, but no father. Deflating thoughts of illegitimacy flooded my mind, stopped by Carol's words. Read the second page of the letter, she said, her voice thinning. Bile-laced fear lashed the back of my throat, but the sour taste receded, overwhelmed by my need to know. The muscles in my throat swelled. I couldn't read the words for the blurring in my eyes. Blinking, a wet saltiness spilled into my mouth. I looked at Carol, my fading words pushed across my lips in wisps. He raped her. Twice! The bastard raped her twice! Carol threw her arms around my neck. I'm glad the son of a bitch is dead. I could kiss whoever killed him. We relished the comfort of each other's arms and finally withdrew, sitting back and inhaling languid breaths, drained of emotion and strength. I wiped my face with my shirt sleeve and gazed at Carol. Well, I chuckled. Sis, what now? She leaned her head back and took a deep breath, puffing out her cheeks and blowing the air toward the ceiling. Then her head slumped against her chest. I don't know. Bro. The metal walls of the unit rattled with shrieks of laughter. I slanted my head toward her. But, I mean, he was your... Sorry. I mean, our father raped our mother. Well, until now we knew him as my father. She chuckled. What a fucking shock. But, I mean, did our mothers know? Is that why we ended up with her surrogate twin sisters? I don't know, and to tell you the truth, I don't care. I've wondered why I never felt a connection to my parents. Now I know. They aren't my parents. Shit. Here's the clincher. I pulled a photo of Zoe from the pile. She must have been around 20. I handed it to Carol. She was quite a knockout. No wonder your dad couldn't keep his hands off her. Take a look at her pinky. Carol brought the photo closer, then studied her own pinky, and then mine. Same birthmark. A dark sadness pained me, and my eyes blurred. Carol brushed a tear from my cheek. I know what you're thinking. I would have liked to have known her, too. We wrapped our arms around each other and pulled each other close like the lost brother and sister we were. I kissed her cheek. Thanks, sis. I needed that. She took the letter and reread the second page. What did you make of this last paragraph? I didn't get that far. She handed it back and I read it a half dozen times. Remove the tape from the anchor. I glanced at the trunks and the piles surrounding us. I don't know. These trunks must be 100 years old. I don't have a dot. I stopped, staring at the interior of my trunk, then Carol's. Scenes of the early 1900s decorated the interior linings. Famous destinations adorned the lining of her trunk, and famous cruise liners adorned mine. Wait a minute. I emptied my trunk and scrutinized the lining. The Titanic sat at anchor in one corner. I shined the light from my phone and a 5 or 6 inch piece of clear tape, starting at the Titanic's anchor chain, gleamed. I pulled the tape, revealing a tear in the fabric behind it. As I peeled the fabric back, Carol squeezed closer, peering over my shoulder. I heard her breath stop. Beneath the fabric was a thin brown envelope and another photo. I glanced up at her. More surprises? Let's see 'em, damn it. I pulled the photo out. Carol gasped. This was taken at the roadhouse where my dad was murdered. I brought the photo closer and squinted at the 2 figures at the bar. Shit. Those 2 at the bar are our dads. Yeah, and by the looks, yours is about to punch mine. He really looks pissed. I flipped it over. It's dated. Carol snatched the photo from my hand and choked a soft gulp. Jesus, that's the night he was killed. I'm sure my face reflected her look of confusion. Like, is it possible? Did my dad murder yours? She tilted her head and squeezed the tip of her tongue between her lips. She must have read my mind. It's possible. But why? She murmured. I gave her a half-hearted shrug. I don't know. Jealousy? I sensed my eyes suddenly widening as the idea sunk in. Crap, were they fighting over Zoe? Did my dad have designs on her too? Only one way to find out. Ask him. Carol jumped to her feet. but I grabbed her arm before she could leave. Wait. I held up the brown envelope. We haven't opened this yet. She knelt as I tore the envelope's flap and removed 2 sheets of paper. I don't think we need to ask. I waved one in front of her nose. This is a sworn deposition. Carol took it and read it. Everything we need to know is there. How your dad raped her and threatened her, and that my dad didn't kill him. I don't understand. Why did she wait? Why didn't she go to the police? Who knows? She's gone. I rubbed the stubble on my cheek. But I have a theory. What? Revenge. You're kidding. I shook my head. A warm flood of satisfaction swept over me. Nope. He was always a suspect, and she knew he was in a miserable marriage. Hell, I was there. I saw it. Obviously, he didn't know she knew. Whatever it was she knew. But then, maybe she got more satisfaction out of watching him wallow in his own personal hell, drinking his life away, broke, living with a woman who hated him. I know Mom wouldn't leave him because she wanted him to be miserable. Maybe she knew too. He wouldn't get a divorce because all sorts of shit would come out about him. Wow, you gotta be angry to wait that long. Holy crap. My mouth dropped. What? I held up the second sheet. This is her will. Carol sat up. Did you know she was married? She shook her head. 35 years. Her husband died 6 years ago, which explains your choice as executor, I guess. Well, what's in the will? My saliva turned to sand. I shoved the paper toward her. The more she read, the wider her eyes became. She slapped the palm of her hand over her mouth. Is that a $sign with 5 zeros behind it? My head bowed toward her in 2 quick, stunned nods. Carol broke into a hysterical laugh. She left everything to us. Where did she get it? Who cares? If that ain't revenge. I turned a sober look her way. What now? It took her a long moment to contain her laughter. Then it sank in. Get a lawyer? That's a good start. I clasped my hands around hers. We've learned a lot today. Good things about you and me. I just hope her will, what she gave us, won't come between us. She smiled. Never. Let's talk options with the lawyer, and she surveilled the residue of Zoe's secret life. Come back and clean this up later. I don't think I can handle any more revelations. No truer words were spoken. How about pizza and a pitcher of beer? I'm ready. She pulled the padlock key from her pocket. I'll lock up and meet you outside. Oh. I stopped and picked up a small envelope and handed it to her. This was clipped to the back of the will. It's addressed to you. Me? She turned it over in her hand. Take your time. I'll wait outside. Carol rolled the door closed and locked the padlock. She put the key in her pocket, opened the envelope, and removed a photo. Her breath hung in her throat. She dropped it like it burned her fingers and stumbled toward the exit, but then turned, ran back, and snatched it from the floor. She stared at it, mumbling, "That's me, at the roadhouse." She shot quick glances up and down the hallway and collapsed against the wall, rubbing the back of her hand across her lips. Closing her eyes for a moment, she rolled her head from side to side and then read the notations on the back of the photo. Dated the night her father died, the sweat ran down her neck in rivulets and her flesh turned cold. Below the date, 8 words, penned in Zoe's graceful script, closed the door to her enigmatic life. I know you killed him. He deserved it. The sins that betray us. It was a warm, Parisian evening, and fog rose from the Seine. It mingled with the smog of industry and clouded the gas street lights that dimly lit cobblestone streets. Beside the Seine, in the 4th arrondissement, was La Force prison, within which was the man Eugène Vidocq, whose wrists were shackled to the dungeon wall by cold steel chains, and ankles bound by manacles. Eugène had black, curly hair and long, thick sideburns that taunted the corners of his mouth. He wore rags. His nose was still bruised from the scuffle to detain him when 5 men were needed to pin him down and capture him. "Monsieur," he said, speaking to Julien de Veria, the Parisian chief of police. "I became a criminal the night my father had me arrested as a boy. When those gendarmes had turned up and taken him away to a cell that night, he had felt betrayed, devastated, and humiliated by his father. Above all, he had felt angry, and that anger had stayed with him all his life, a chip on his shoulder that had been ever present in his interactions and informed his life choices." Julien sat in the opposite corner of the dungeon on a wooden stool. His top hat lay in his lap, and his walking cane leant against the wall. He remained as still as a gargoyle. "Your trial for treason commences at first light, and you wish to reminisce about your father. Do not waste my time." The flame of torches lining the walls flickered. A rat scurried between iron bars and retreated into the shadows. "I have watched the guillotine sever the head of my dear friend César Herbeau. This cannot be my fate." He shook his head. The surprised look upon César's face as his head fell to the ground was forever etched in his memory. He could not shake it, could not recall how César used to smile, or the jovial times they had shared in local brothels. "You have deserted from the army. You have stolen, you have forged, and you have destroyed marriages. Why would I care about your fate?" Orange from the flickering flames glinted in Julien's eyes. A distant scream echoed around the chamber. It briefly registered to Eugène like the sound of a new prisoner being subdued into his iron attire. "Monsieur, I crave a life no longer on the run," said Eugène, thinking of his recent arrest. His estranged wife, who left him for a soldier, had found him back in Paris and reported him to the gendarmerie. He could never be free while the sins of his past stalked his being. "Such is the fate of a criminal. Why would I care about what you crave? You are wasting my time," Julien said, snatching up his cane and smashing it against the stone wall. He stood. "Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, let me tell you what I can do for you, so as not to waste any more of your time." Julien pushed out the backs of his jacket and sat carefully on his stool. "Proceed. Thieves adore me. Hardened wretches esteem me. I drink and mingle in their circles. I have their trust. I know their hearts. I will gather their secrets and share them with you." We have informants already. Why would I need you, monsieur? I will be the best of them all. Of your informants, do any have as much esteem amongst the other criminals? Of your informants, have any been as cunning as me to escape prison so many times, even dressed as a nun to avoid detection? Sir, I will go to lengths those simpletons could not even imagine imagining. I will be your best informant, monsieur. I know this without a doubt, and I think you do too. I can't trust you, monsieur. When my late father had me arrested as a boy, my fate was sealed. In my mind, I became a criminal. It has taken my whole life to realize he did that out of love. I can be different. I can be of use to society. I can be the man my father knew I could be. I don't know if you can, monsieur. I've seen the end. I've seen my friend's head freed from his body by guillotine. I know that God's grace has all but kept me alive. I will be as devious as I was in crime, but use those skills to catch the criminals and make Paris safer. He shook his head. Just as the rats carry the plague, I fear you spread a vile truth. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, just give me one last chance. Please. Julian was silent. We will hold off your trial in the morning. But know this, you are one mistake from execution. I want intelligence, actionable intelligence, or you'll be seeing your father sooner than you had imagined. He stood, gathered his cane, placed his top hat on his head, and waved to a guard outside the cell to let him out. Eugene put his head back on the stone wall and blinked away a tear. He would be tireless. He would be disciplined. He would use the tricks and the cons and the black arts he had learned. It was clear that Julian barely believed what was said, but that was fine, because he knew what was there in his heart. And it was true, and with time, he would prove it. He felt the anger that had fueled his heart for so long start to thaw. The miserable wretch that was his soul felt a flicker of hope. His father had loved him and had wanted him to be the best he could be, no matter how tragically he had tried to teach that lesson. And now he understood that it was only ever a lesson. He could become the man his father knew he could be. Bloody hands. The night was pitch black because the moon was too shy to come out from the clouds. With a restless heart, I stood there, waiting for my brother. I knew what I am doing is a sin, but sometimes the path of sin is the only path forward. I agreed to this for Mom. She really needs my help. I broke the window. Come on, it's time. I have a bad feeling about this. Don't you want to help Mom? He always uses the mom card. Do I love my mom? Yes, I do. But that doesn't mean what we're doing is right. Because of his dumb idea, We're sitting right outside a stranger's house in the middle of nowhere. A simple mistake could derail our whole plan. Mom needed money, and she was never going to ask me for help. But I wanted to help her. She has done enough for me, maybe more than enough. Being a single mom in this patriarchal world is pretty painful. I know that. That's why I asked my 1 minute older twin brother for help. Never did I think he would come up with a plan for a heist to save the family. Mom will have a heart attack if she finds out about this. She won't know about this. I swear on Dad. He talked as if he knew what I was thinking. Whoa, calm down. I will go in. We never talk about our dad unless it's necessary. So I knew he was serious. He always comes up with all these stupid ideas that get me in trouble. But Mom thinks it's me who does all this. But this time, he might be on to something. But I think the same thing every other time until things start to go sideways. Yet, I was ready to take the chance one more time. I opened the door and went inside the dark kitchen. The whole place was filled with a foul smell. If my expert brother is correct, a man lives in this house alone with a priceless gold chain of his ancestors. Many have seen him roaming around in his courtyard with the chain around his neck. I just have to find him, sedate him with chloroform, and steal the chain. If I am lucky enough, he will be sleeping with the chain around his neck. Just take it and leave while slowly sneaking towards the bedroom. I looked back to make sure my brother was behind me. I stopped in the middle of the dark room when I saw a hammer in his hand. What's that? Nothing. It's just for protection. As I stood there, unsatisfied with his answer, the lights went on. The next thing I heard was a man screaming in fear. While I looked around to find the source of the scream, I heard a bang. A strange man fell onto my arms with a bleeding head. His helpless eyes reminded me of someone I knew. Dad? As I was trying hard to figure out what was going on, I heard my brother's voice coming from the door. With a bloody hammer in his hand, he was screaming, "Come on, let's go." As I started to run, following my brother, I knew things have gone wrong. I could feel the warmth of the blood splattered all over my face and clothes. Slowly, my vision began to blur. I could no longer see my brother. Darkness covered my eyes. I continued to run into the dark path in front of me. After running for some time, I reached my house. I got in through the back door, just like I did at that stranger's house earlier. I felt the guilt growing inside me. I should find my brother. I searched the whole house for him, but he was not there. Where has he gone? I need him. I tried hard to bottle up my emotions so I won't wake up my mom. She was sleeping. After working all day long for me, she deserved the rest. She needed the sleep. I searched for my phone to call my brother. I need him now. The eyes of the man began to haunt me. I could feel my mind going out of control. I couldn't handle it. The phone was not in my pocket. It was there. It was there when I went inside the man's house. It must have slipped out. I bit hard on my arm to feel some pain. I fucked up big time. Mom's going to lose it when the police come for me. She won't take it. She can't take it. I began to hear sirens from far away. Where is my brother? Where is he when I need him? I felt a sudden weight in my left arm. It was the hammer, soaked in warm blood. Wasn't it in his hands? I saw him run away with it. How did it get here? My head began to spin. I could hear the sirens getting louder. The police are coming for me. They will drag me away from my mom. They are going to make her sad again. I won't let that happen. She doesn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve any of this. Free her. Free her from the pain you will cause. The pain she is about to feel. I could hear my twin brother again in my head. He always comes up with all these bold ideas that get me in trouble. But this time, I think he is on to something. As I moved towards my snoring mom, I could hear the sirens nearing. I can't let them take me away from my mom. I smelled her beautiful black hair with the soothing smell of jasmine. I lifted the hammer as my brother told me. With a full swing, I bashed the hammer into her head. All of a sudden, the sirens in my head went silent. I stood there, looking at my hands, covered in my mom's warm blood. Countdown to death. I stared at the wall with half-lidded eyes and gulped. My breath was hoarse and croaky, my throat dry and absent of hydration. My hands trembled uncontrollably, scrambling for the cheap chalk, even though my eyes never once graced the sight of the white stick. My exhales were never rhythmic, constantly choking on the air as I mentally tried to inhale and exhale at the same time. I looked at every line drawn individually, memorizing what each meant to every detail of the messy scratch. There drawn were tallies, 42 singular ones, 8 full ones, with 2 to spare, to be exact. Each resembled each day I was kept here, in this hell. And they were slowly counting down to the inevitable release. I had 3 more weeks to fully understand my limited time here. My eyes suddenly widened as I let out a scream of terror. A scream that my fellow prisoners were very accustomed to. A scene of trauma washed over my eyes and sent my body crashing down onto the floor in pure fear. A sense of panic overwhelmed me, and my body began to sweat. All my movements henceforth were uncontrollable and predicted by the past. My emotions were painfully drowned by regretful memories that I begged to forget. I could only watch as my gravest mistake haunted me once again. "Paulette!" a gruff voice called, alerting me and distracting me from my duties. Paulette Ann Hadley. That's me. Short blue hair and matching piercing eyes. I'd dream about how they held the essence of the pure sky. But those thoughts were the only fantasies that I used to distract me from the life that I dreaded so much. Then again, I was very far from pure, even before the incident. "Paulette!" they shouted again after only a few seconds of waiting. Impatient as always, incompetent as always, the voice belonged to my master, the Earl of Daventry, Sir Peter Holmes, a sorrowful old man who spent his seemingly endless days laying in his bed or sat in his office, scoffing his face with the fatty meals the chefs were forced to cook to fulfill his never-ending stomach. He ate his feelings. I'd feel sorry for him if he weren't such a bastard. "Paulette!" he screeched for the third time, all in the span of 20 seconds, so loud that I saw the family of mice that lived in the corner of the laundry room scurry across the dusty cobblestone floors in fright. I rolled my eyes in frustration and slapped the grungy old rag I used to clean the counter into the rusty steel sink. I tightened my apron and smoothed out the traditional maid's dress, all while cursing to myself in irritation. My uniform was nothing out of the ordinary for a low-classed maid like myself. Black and white, all the way through, of course. A short black dress with a white apron, white stockings, and black buckled shoes. I hurried up the grand staircase of the large Daventry estate, my feet thanking me for gifting them of a different surface to stand on that wasn't rough, uneven stone. Luscious carpet was certainly a lovely change from grubby concrete. Reaching my master's doors was something I was always dreaded because of what lay on the other side. I pressed a hand against the shiny wood, recently dusted and glossed by yours truly. The smooth touch of the spruce was nice against my sore and worn fingertips. "Master," I greeted with a sickly sweet tone, a forced smile painting my features. I could almost feel my left eye twitch in pent-up hatred. "Paulette!" he roared, his voice deep and gravelly. He was laid down on his satin sheets that held many empty plates and cups from the meals I had brought since this morning. They were already piling up. This sight was nothing new to me. This is what I spent my life's work on. This is what drove me insanity. A plate mounted with Victoria sponge cake rested on his rising and falling stomach. Oh, how I wanted to rip it open. "Yes, master?" I repeated, my voice bearing the same bittersweetness as every phrase that escaped my lips directed to my mortifying master. "I don't pay you to lounge around," I have been waiting for hours," he scolded, only to choke on a strawberry that had been layered between the sponge. Bits of red fruit spewed out into the air and dirtied the satin sheets with spit and berry. I cringed at the sight, but tried to contain the look because of the presence of my judgmental master. I enjoyed watching him struggle. "I was just finishing up the washing, master," I responded simply, never giving him the gift of eye contact. "I don't care what you were doing," he snapped with a snarl. "Clean up this mess. I am lying in filth. Hurry up, woman." He turned to his side, without giving a care about the plate that slid off his bloated stomach and smudged jam onto the expensive emerald. "Clean me up too," he ordered, with his own ugly, toothy cringe, showing off grimy yellow teeth. I rolled my shoulders backwards and relaxed my joints in a desperate attempt to contain my rage. I took 3 deep breaths through clenched teeth and slowly walked over to my master, my anger increasing with every step. I piled the empty plates into stacks and balanced them on my forearms to get the task done in one go and get away from my master as soon as possible. My muscles tensed under the weight of so much weight and sent my body to lean forward uncontrollably and my face to squish into the duvet. This would be a simple, clumsy topple to anyone but myself. Due to the superiority complex my master harbored, a deathly scream was sent sounding around the master bedroom. "Paulette, how dare you assault me like this?" He shrieked like a toddler as he pulled away from my body as if I were a parasite. I gulped, my body pulsing with overwhelming fury. My breaths became hollow and uneven, my lungs aching at the lack of oxygen I provided. Sorry, I stuttered, my voice dipping from a forced sweetness to a deep sarcasm. A sore cough followed my words, and a ripple crawled up my spine like a wave of violent anxiety washing over me without placing my eyes upon it. My fingertips grazed the blade of a knife covered in grease. My eyes widened, and all of a sudden, my movements were prioritized over my thoughts. My grip tightened on the kitchen knife, the sharp blade digging into my fingers' flesh and drawing blood. The red liquid sunk into the satin and stained the fabric. But that was no problem, as lots more blood was soon to follow after. I let out a whimper as pain soared through my nerves. But I paid no matter. My only mind's focus was on the man who stared at me in confusion and growing anger. I couldn't care less about his emotions because they soon morphed into ones of pain and shock as I stabbed the tip of the knife into his belly. I pulled my hand off the blade and smeared my blood onto his naked stomach. I subconsciously let out a joyful yelp at the sight of his blood mixing with mine and creating an uncomfortable solution of growing red. I pressed my uninjured hand against the wooden handle of the knife and pushed the blade further into my master's stomach. I hastily pulled out the deadly weapon and plunged it back into his stomach. Blood splattered onto my dress, onto the bed, and onto my face. I repeated this sequence several times, the knife constantly going in and out of the body and splashing blood. With every cut, more blood seeped and deepened the stain on my usually perfectly clean apron. My face was now smeared in the metallic-smelling liquid and was dripping down my chin as if I were slurping soup, but missed my mouth. Master died after just a few stabs due to bleeding out and contagious infection. But that didn't stop my excitement. I sliced as much flesh as I could, covering as much surface area as I could, and slathering it with fresh, pungent blood. I made sure not to leave any area untouched with my bubbling rage. My lips twitched as a laugh escaped my throat, choking on itself and departing in the form of an evil cackle. I doubled down in laughter as pure ecstasy ran through my veins. I bounced on the expensive bed and headed towards the limp head of my master. I swiftly sliced the knife across my master's throat and admired the way sickly liquid swam down his wrinkled neck and ran down his chest like separating rivers. That blood quickly melded with that of his stomach and made a pool that looked like it had originated from the depths of hell itself. I twirled on the bed, never minding my steps that prodded into my master's corpse. The authorities arrived before I had taken my leave, and I was seized before I could flee. I was captured before I could even reminisce my actions. I was taken to Egan prison and remained there till my death. 3 months, to be exact. It was not a natural death, but a chosen one, confirmed by those who didn't even know me. I let out a gasp as the walls of my cell reappeared around me, and the touch of the cold concrete floor returned to my fingertips. My eyes widened as I took sight of the clean wall in front of me. They were gone. My tallies were gone. I let out a cough and a choke. "Help! Help!" I screamed, throwing myself at the wall and slamming a fist upon it in distress. "They're gone. They're gone. Who did this?" I demanded, punching the wall and watching blood draw my knuckles and splatter onto the gray. "Your day has come, Hadley. You're finally free." A voice mused, their tone echoing throughout my secluded cell. "What?" I gaped, blinking like a confused dog. "Free? Well, free from life, of course." They chuckled maliciously, taunting me with their freedom. I chose not to turn towards the guard that addressed me so rudely. My eyes continuously trained on the blank wall in front of me. I have a few more weeks. I don't want to die." I cried out, tears brimming my eyes and blurring my vision. Should have thought about that before you killed a man. The guard glared, pulling open the door of my cell and approaching me with handcuffs. I pressed my back against the wall, but there was no escaping death. I was quickly seized and yanked down the hallway, past my fellow death row inmates. I hung my head low, hair shadowing my eyes and creating an eerie effect. My breaths were loud as anxiety built up inside of me. A panic attack approaching at a tremendous speed that I wished to slow down. I stumbled over my footing several times, each one getting more clumsy and emotional. By now, tears were streaming down my cheeks and creating thin lines of cleanliness that contrasted with the dirt and grime that littered my flesh. I did nothing to stop the loud sobs that slipped through my trembling and muttering lips, weeping as dread and hysteria flowed through every pore. We soon reached a standstill where I was forced into a chair. I stared into vicious brown eyes that reflected my own teary ones. They held no sympathy or remorse, just a simple hue of cheek. I inhaled and exhaled harshly, every breath increasing in volume, mass, and sound. Leather-worn straps were tightened over my wrists and ankles, and a rusty metal brace was placed firmly at my temples. Fear soared through my veins like rockets. I pulled and struggled against my restraints that were quickly cutting off my blood flow. I let out screams for mercy, but they went unheard. Let me go, please. It's not my time. I have weeks. I can't die, I wailed, shaking my head violently in a weak attempt to get rid of the brace that held me so firmly. A loud slap sounded throughout the dimly lit room. My head was thrown to the side, and a pulsing sting was sent flaring at my right cheek. My pleads and sobs ceased. Just a quiet whimper left in its place as a final emotion of sorrow took its toll. Shut it, woman, a guard hissed. Paulette Ann Hadley, you are sentenced to death via electrocution for the murder of Sir Peter Holmes on January 16th, 1898. Do you have any last words? Another guard recited, his tone bearing no sincerity whatsoever. I took a deep breath, lifting my gaze and meeting his to dramatize my following words. A scowl was painted at my lips, and furrowed eyebrows of anger took over my features. He deserved it. I growled with nothing but rage in my voice, a pull at the lever, and a crackle of wiring. Electricity was sent pulsing through my brain and sparked an agony that tore scream after scream from my dry throat. Quickly, my mind was sent spiraling into the endless dark abyss known as death, justice, in a whiskey. March 21st, 1957. There is blood on the bed, his stomach ripped open, his left eye mutilated, and the side table is lying near the door frame. His wife is bawling her eyes out and there is a half-empty bottle of whiskey under the bed. The cut on his body shows that he was attacked by a knife, and the incision is so clean, almost as if the murderer is an anatomy genius. The mouth of the body is gaping open, and his neck has purple splotches. My friend, who is an investigator, clicks photos from all angles. With each flash of the camera, I see a clue unfolding beside me. Officer Barn rushes towards me, his eyes speaking of a strange fear. He clasps my shoulder, urging me to come out of the room. I march out and stand near the doorframe, my eyes speaking instead of my tongue. "What's the matter, Barn?" I ask him, trying to hide the expression on my face. "We need to hurry. This case is a very high profile." He coughs up, interrupting himself. He's not an ordinary person. He is the son of a famous business tycoon. This case is no longer a government record. It's a public scandal. He huffs at the end. "I know he is the son of Mr. Edward, owner of the steel factory, but we cannot hurry it up, leaving clues to the rats." I breathe in with ease. We cannot delay it either. Mr. Barnes speaks up. "We need to fasten our belts and rush our brains before it goes out into the hands of the media." I nod my head and once again enter the room, observing each minute detail. I see a leaflet in the vase of flowers. I ask my assistant for gloves. I wear them and take the leaflet carefully from the flowers. It's a prescription. The ink is fading away in the water, but the logo on the paper is smudged, yet noticeable. "Sir, you can hand it over," the forensic officer says, pointing out to a plastic bag in his hands. I take the plastic bag from him and carefully put the leaflet in it. I fold the upper corner of the bag and place it on the left side of my coat pocket. "Sir, the evidence belongs in our department. I beg your pardon, but you have to hand it over to us." The forensic officer pleads with his eyes and places out his arm. "Even I have a small lab at my home. I would love to personally investigate in my space." I boldly put my statement forward. "I wish you could do that, sir. But since the case is high profile, we have to follow all the orders from our seniors and judiciary. I can't help you this time. I would love your cooperation more." I sign in defeat and take the bag from my right side of my coat and place it in his hand. He bows his head in respect and leaves the place. I go into the drawing room where the wife of the victim is present. She has a lilac handkerchief in her hands and is wearing a black dress. Her eyes are red due to the constant crying, and her cheeks are soaked in due to her tears. She's surrounded by her neighbors and friends. I tell them to depart soon, to push my investigation forward. Everybody leaves, and Catherine gathers herself, aligning her back with her body. I sit a few inches apart from her, observing her delicate little hands, which no longer has the burden of the band. "Miss Catherine, sorry for your loss. I know the departure of your husband is so unexpected, and I could understand your sorrow." She sobbed a little and quivered her lips. "I hope my husband gets justice, sir. That's all I want. I want the culprit dead." Her eyes blazing with anger and deep sorrow. I take her hand in mine and say to her with a coy smile, "That will soon happen. I promise you." I could feel the coldness of the plastic in our hands. A week before, I could not take my eyes away from the bruise, which was on Catherine's left elbow. The wound itself is telling the backstory of its origin. She lifts my chin, directing my eyes towards her. Her hands were cold, and her little finger was swollen. Her eyes were dull, with no light or joy. "You called me here for something?" She questions me with disgrace and disregard. "Yeah, so I am going to dive in for cooking. You know, learning a few basic skills and recipes." I laugh at my lie and take out the tray of knives. "So, what are you starting with?" Her voice is cold like ice, and her eyes tired. She has a small brown patch near her eyelid, hinting at her life. I immediately try to distract myself from the bruise by balling my fists and digging my fingernails into my palms. I think with the stomach, cleaning and cutting will be far easier from here, I say, pointing out to the featherless chicken on the table. "That's interesting. So, what help do you need from me?" Catherine asks me. "Well, I don't know about the cleaning and cutting. Like, see this butler's knives? It's too big for the work. We don't need this, but this." I point out to the medium-sized scalpel with a sharp edge. "I think this will do. Precision cut and less mess." She nods her head, and a slow smile rises across her square face. Even I think so. I loved the way she smiled, always. "By the way, have you read the 10th chapter of Volume 1 of Anatomy?" I ask her, with my eyes focused on the scalpel. 3 weeks earlier. I always flunked chemistry. Thanks to you, otherwise I would be a technician in a hospital. I pass a gentle smile to Catherine. "I don't know about the academics' chemistry, but your reaction with women was always volatile." She taunts with me, her gentle smile. "Not all, only with one." But that reaction became highly toxic for everybody. Hearing my sharp words, her smile disappeared. I hate for causing an explosion in that research. If I had focused on one chemical, then my life would not have been so volatile. Her voice sounded disapproved. "I miss my compound too." I sigh with disbelief. She turns away from her face and wipes her tears. I know it's so tough for her to gather the courage daily and to chalk out the plan. I try to lighten the mood surrounding us. "The movie makers are so hypocrites," I shout. "What?" She turns around, but does not see me in the eye. "They always show that when you place the chloroform on someone's face, the person instantly passes out. But it's not true. A person at least requires 15 minutes of continuous exposure for passing out to its fullest. Movies are for entertainment not for knowledge, we say in unison. Out-timing makes me laugh, and she laughs seeing me laugh. By the way, Catherine, I want to say you an amazing fact. Do you know, whiskey and chloroform have the same taste. She finally sees me in the eye and smiles. Now I know. And laughs like a small hyena. 4 weeks earlier, the church is calm, and the benches are clean. It's Monday, hence the absence of people seems relevant. I smell the candles burning, and could hear the faint sobbing from the room of confession. I walk towards it and open the stall. It was empty, but the nearby stall wasn't. I rotate my head around to see anyone's presence, and finally steps in. Feeling the presence of my space, the sobbing discontinued. It's the result of my sin. If I hadn't cheated the person who loved me the most and did not break his heart, this would have never happened. Her voice breaks down, and through the thin mesh, I could guess her marble hands wiping the tears away from her face. The result, or the outcome of your sin, depends on the Lord itself. It's you and me who have the final decision. I have forgiven you already. But what about the devotion and love you offer him? Is his response appropriate? Does raising hand on your wife courageous? I sigh in dismay. But what are we going to do? Do you think your plan is proper? She questions my intentions. The law won't help us. His hands are long, and their pockets are full with his money. It's not about how I feel. It's about the justice you need. I face her across the mesh, digging my fingernails in my palm. I won't lose you because of somebody's treatment. I choke down my tears. She stands across the mesh, placing her hand on it. I do the same. A month ago, sir, there is a woman. She is stating emergency and needs urgent observation. Will you come soon? The nurse hurried her sentences. Can you call another doctor? I have completed my hours. I pack my suitcase and turn to leave. She says it's a matter of life and death, sir. The nurses exclaim. Okay, fine. Only 15 minutes. Then transfer her case to Dr. Edmund. I wipe the sweat on my forehead and put on my white coat. Sometimes the Hippocratic oath becomes the death of me. I go to the patient's cubicle. I am in no mood to observe the patient. I remove the board placed near the bed and read the symptoms taken by the nurse. Internal bleeding in the cervix, partially choked, bruises on hand and near the eyes, lower lip cut, fracture on the wrist. Miss, when did this happen? And how can we aid you? I reply bluntly. My energy is on brink of exhaustion and pushed to my limits. A pale, cold hand catches my wrist, and a humble voice reaches my ear. Just forgive me, will you? My ears recognize it. And when I see her face, the blood in my body stills. I catch her limp hand and shout, Catherine. Tears were flowing down her eyes, and her face had lost the life and sunshine she had. All she could do was clasp my hand with more force. I kiss her knuckles and run my fingers lightly on the bruises. Seeing her in this state, my mind rattles. I clench my teeth, and tears of anger rush down my cheeks. "Who did this to you?" I ask her, trying to mask my anger. She gathers herself, and with the last courage within her, utters, "My husband, trial by egotism." The Honorable Judge Harold Brybar strode to the bench, bearing a coy smile. The court knew that smile well, as did millions watching on view screens all over Mars, as did tens of millions back on Earth who wouldn't get the feed for another hour or so. They also knew the arch of his thick gray eyebrows, the well-trimmed salt and pepper hair he'd gracefully let recede, the petite spectacles he wore when reading, and the mild way he cleared his throat to bring the whole courtroom to attention. In offense to all known theories of jurisprudence, Judge Harold Brybar was a celebrity judge, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. As Brybar sat down, he produced his legendary gavel from the folds of his cloak. It was the gavel that had sent General Sabrina Gallo to the slammer. It was the gavel that had brought justice to the ungrateful eight. It was the gavel that had, so mournfully, let the Scarlet Assassin walk on a series of technicalities. Years ago, a rookie reporter dubbed it the cinematic hammer of justice, and the moniker stuck, though Brybar only laughed and shook his head ruefully when asked about the moniker. Chekhov would have surely side-eyed this fabled instrument of law and order. "This should be the final day of the trial," Judge Brybar said after customarily clearing his throat. "If Miss Tottle's statement runs long, we'll cut for lunch at 11. How long do you think you'll go?" He flashed a smile at the defendant. "An hour should do it." Marissa Towtle flashed a smile right back between lips stained dark red. She came to court in a maroon pantsuit with a long matching jacket that almost reached the ground, and dark lipstick and fingernail polish to match. Stylish, but, for her, understated. Earlier in the trial, she'd favored brighter colors, including a pastel blue skirt that drew immense attention, much of it mockery in the press. She'd been on trial for previous burglaries and had proven as much a celebrity as the judge overseeing her case. That she'd taken to defending herself only heightened the circus atmosphere. You couldn't wish for a more theatrical combination of defendant and judge. "Excellent," the judge said. "That would mean the jury can deliberate over lunch. A smooth-running ship at last." The assembled audience, standing room only, laughed nervously, revealing how much tension the courtroom held. In theory, Towtle should be guilty as a Labrador by a demolished birthday cake. She'd been caught red-handed in the most elaborate and movie-like theft in the history of the planet after all. But many speculated Towtle had a trick or two up her sleeve. Gambling websites gave her a 15% chance of acquittal, and even a 5% chance of escape. The third prime participant in this drama feels ordinary by comparison. Veronica Brief charted a conventional path as she rose through the prosecutorial ranks. Top grades, hard work, schmoozing, ambition, and a photographic memory. There's little reason to elaborate on her story. Veronica had aimed for calm, efficient, and professional as her persona. She let Marissa and Judge Brybar provide the entertainment. The stately prosecutor drew little mention in the tabloids despite overseeing the case of the millennium. And she'd presented a good case, which was easy in one sense because of how strong the evidence was. Someone had stolen the twin pins of Mars, diamond-encrusted spikes that ceremonially finished the oxygen dome of the first Martian city. Marissa Towtle was a known high-stakes burglar and ex-con. She'd been present at the benefit concert from which the pins were stolen. She'd purchased the chemicals needed for the distracting foam bomb that had gone off at the concert, and most damningly, one of the diamond pins had been found in her very apartment. The list of witnesses and items in evidence is so long that, again, there's little need to go into much detail. The most troubling possibility was that if the jury liked Marissa too much, that they were simply so entertained, they might ignore the evidence and vote for acquittal. Today, the defendant would make her last appeal. Today, Marissa Towdell, who'd fired her lawyers after just 4 days into the proceedings, would make her closing argument. She wasn't a lawyer, had never been to law school, and committed innumerable mistakes of law throughout the trial, but she still possessed the supernatural confidence of a legendary burglar. So she'd plowed ahead, learned from each mistake of process, always found a way to laugh with the audience as she suffered a series of sustained objections against her. The Red Planet stood entranced, listening to how she would make her final plea. Marissa Towdell rose. She was quite short, but cut a dramatic figure nonetheless. She strode to the center of the room to address the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my honored peers, good morning to you. Also, good morning to everyone watching in the live audience in this wonderful city of New Olympus and all across Mars and our sister planet of Earth. Also, a quick shout out to anyone reading the transcript in the future. That's serious dedication. Laughter. The prosecution has done a thorough job presenting the evidence against me, and I would be foolish to claim no fear. They found one of the diamond pins at my apartment. Can you believe my incredulity? Without that one piece of evidence, all they have is hearsay and circumstance. And who hasn't been hurt by hearsay and circumstance? I was sorely mistreated on the day they overturned my home. Veronica had decided early in the trial not to be surprised by anything Marissa said. Here she was, starting her final defense by bringing up the single strongest piece of evidence against her, submerging it in a strange cocktail of jokes and grievances. Still, she was as oddly compelling as she'd been the whole trial. Have I mentioned how good you look, jury? The fall weather has really brought out your fashion sense. Such lovely browns and greens. I'm going to miss you all when this trial is finally over. And soon it will be over, won't it? Oh, I don't know if this is legal. Is it legal to compliment and reminisce with the jury? It is, if there's no objection from the prosecution. This was the judge, now looking in Veronica's direction with a raised eyebrow. All around the court, Veronica felt all eyes suddenly on her. And it was true. She could object for relevance or ingratiation, which Mars had added to the legal code 50 years ago. No objection, Veronica said after a pause worthy of a sitcom, to titters and laughter from the audience. She hadn't intended to object at all, no matter how wild the defendant got. It's considered poor form to object during closing arguments, unless the faults are egregious. Plus, ordinary folks see through flattery and immaterial wanderings most of the time, and that should be especially so in this case. Marissa wasn't just on trial for grand theft, but also for assault. When she'd set off the foam bomb at the dedication ceremony, 3 people had been injured, and many dozens more might have been. These charges alone could add up to decades behind bars. A jury might excuse burglary if they liked a defendant, but harming innocent spectators? No way, Veronica thought. Marissa had avoided lengthy prison sentences from previous burglaries through clever negotiating, and because she'd always been careful to avoid violence. Now she might be mere hours from a lifetime in prison. How was she so calm? At this point, Marissa had moved on to a PowerPoint presentation with a selection of quotes projected onto the large screen across from the jury, with certain words highlighted for effect. The rotten witch made all the plans and said it would be an easy score without any risk of harm to anyone. That's what one of my supposed henchmen said about me, if you'll remember. I don't see why that insult was necessary. Read the next quote, this time from a witness who supposedly saw me outside the concert hall. She was laughing like a hyena, or like some evil witch. With the shouting inside, I could barely hear her, but I was close enough I could just make out the cackle. I could read each and every one of these quotes, each more demeaning than the last, but you can look over the full list if you've got the stomach for it. So many horrible things said about me, which I don't mind. I can accept taunts and jeers. But it is certainly interesting that so many of these witnesses couldn't help but include spiteful, disparaging remarks. And you'll notice how many bring out the W word. It almost feels like they were coordinating their testimony somehow. Veronica caught a glimpse of the jury. She read ambivalence on their faces, scowls, smirks, narrowed, focused eyes, and furrowed brows. They were all paying attention, but none appeared sympathetic, and only a few seemed amused. She found it galling that Marissa would imply misconduct from the prosecution. Early in the legal process, Marissa had tried to trade the location of the second diamond pin for legal protection, which Veronica would never have agreed to. Not leastwise because the police were convinced they could lean on her conspirators to produce the second pin, an assumption which, 7 weeks later, had not come true. Those negotiations were inadmissible at trial, but made Marissa's attempts to cast the prosecution as corrupt all the more preposterous. Marissa knew she was guilty, and knew the prosecution knew she was guilty. And then there's the matter of the diamond pin of peace, found in my apartment, right under my very bed. It's the linchpin of the case against me. But do you find that likely? That a supposed master criminal would conceal the single most damning evidence in the most obvious and cliched place to hide something? And that underscores my next point, that the diamond pin of prosperity is yet to be found. If I had stolen them both, why hide one in an obvious place than another where the police have yet still to find? I'm not going to accuse anyone else of being the real thief, and therefore the person who planted the evidence while keeping half the spoils for themselves, not right at this moment anyway. I don't have the resources of the police or prosecutors to chase leads and likely suspects. But how can you not be suspicious of these circumstances? Marissa had raised her voice by this point. Despite her grandiosity, she'd kept her tone civil, even playful. But now she strode about the floor, her jacket swirling in great red arcs. She turned to the prosecution table and approached Veronica, though even with her heels, she stood barely a few inches taller than her adversary, sitting up straight. Marissa leaned over the table between them. Veronica held her gaze in as steely a manner as she could muster. She wasn't intimidated, but feared smiling at this bit of theatrics, which might send the wrong message to the jury. They've stacked things so thoroughly against me. A huge team of cops and prosecutors, all working to dig up evidence. 3 of my friends called to testify against me. Hundreds of hours of security video. Reams of texts stolen from my phone. All this effort searching for any slip-up, inconsistency, or wrong place, wrong time circumstance. And in the end, their whole case rests on a single, dubious discovery. Marissa whirled on Veronica, her jacket cape swirling like a tornado. She approached the judge, held his eye contact for many moments. Veronica couldn't read her face with her back turned, but Judge Brybar's eyes narrowed, turning from amused to suspicious to worried. Only then did worry enter Veronica's own mind. Could Marissa really have a grand plan to turn the trial on its head, or even to escape? Everyone in this courtroom stands against me. I've been fighting every official and advocate aligned for a single purpose. These whole 7 weeks I've fought. She stood right before the judge now, a dark red fingernail pointed but a meter from his face. "Control yourself," the judge warned, his voice steady. Marissa slowly retreated her hand to her chest, but kept the finger out. Then she approached still further and placed her hands on the edge of the bench. Judge Brybar screwed his face up in an apoplectic grimace. "I kindly ask you to back away," the judge said with barely concealed rage. And Marissa did so. She turned slowly, her jacket an eddy rather than a hurricane. The whole audience appeared to exhale at this drawdown in tension. The calm wouldn't last. The true thief, the true mastermind, is in this courtroom right now. Marissa raised her hand, extending that damning index finger clad in crimson, thrusting it high in the air like the barrel of a smoking gun. The courtroom turned deathly quiet. Marissa twirled her finger in the air. Once, twice. A woman screamed in the audience. Several people stood. Veronica noticed the judge fumbling for his gavel. Why was his gavel not to hand? Veronica's photographic memory went to work, rewinding to a minute prior. The gavel had disappeared from the moment Marissa had placed her hands on the bench. When she'd made that dramatic turn, she must have... "Approach, Your Honor?" Veronica called out, but was drowned out by the growing tumult of the audience. She stood and shouted, "Approach, Your Honor! Your gavel! She has your gavel in her sleeve!" The chaos intensified, cries and laughter mixing together. Judge Brybar's eyes were wide as Phobos and Deimos in the Martian night sky. The bailiffs stood frozen for a moment, but one caught Veronica's eye. They nodded at each other and sprung into motion. Veronica charged. She couldn't say why, necessarily. But the thought entered her mind that perhaps this was a grand distraction to allow Marissa some clever escape, and that was just too much of an affront to the seasoned prosecutor. It was a breach of decorum to get involved in bailiff duties, but Veronica had been a track athlete in college and had taken basic police training, and there was so much energy in the courtroom. The bailiff, a stocky woman with a tight ponytail, whose expression almost never changed, her name was Lawrence, Veronica wanted to say, got there first and held Marissa under the arms. Marissa was making a show of struggling without really struggling, calling her capture a brute. Veronica held Marissa's eye contact while she riffled in her sleeves, producing the lost gavel within seconds. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, with what she hoped was cinematic showmanship, as she cast the gavel onto the bench. Adjourned. Adjourned. Take the defendant into custody. The judge had retrieved the cinematic hammer of justice and was banging it on the bench like a woodpecker. Slowly, the veins in his forehead receded as the bailiffs took Marissa away. Next, the judge leaned down to whisper to Veronica, "Meet me in chambers. I fear we're looking at a mistrial." Of course, a mistrial. Was that Marissa's plan? But how would this help her? More chances to escape, maybe, but then she'd surely earned tighter security from this fiasco. She'd wait in prison for the next trial, and the evidence against her would be as strong as ever. Why had she done this? Why had she made such a scene? But then, she'd so loved playing the lawyer, stirring up drama and having all eyes on her. These last 7 weeks may have been the most exciting of an already legendary life. With this performance, Marissa Towdle hadn't earned her freedom, but she'd earned another shot at being the center of the known universe.